welcome back to Fed Up, the number one podcast where you can get up on all things Federal League. I am your host, Josh Stoll, and with us, our executive producer, Chris Minor.
What's going on, Josh?
What a week it was in the Federal League. Really just games from Thursday to Sunday. Had a couple of rainouts Monday and Tuesday, but we were able to cram 21 games in 4 days, and it's getting juicy. Having some heavyweights playing each other. A lot of great games to review this week. We'll, of course, do that on our Max Bat Scoreboard Roundup. We're going to bring you a brand new version of the Power Rankings. And yes, a lot of change, especially at the top. We are going to look at what's ahead on the Federal League schedule in a segment we like to call What's on Tap. 28 games coming over the next week. We are really into the teeth of the schedule, and things are heating up in terms of the amount of games and the weight of the games and what they mean when it comes to the postseason brackets.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's been pretty vanilla for the first few weeks, right? And all of a sudden, just started up on Friday. Everything kind of started popping off a little bit. So it was a fun little weekend to stay plugged in.
We've also got a great pair of guests, RIAN HEASLIP and Jeff Wilson from the newly branded St. Louis Park Snappers will be joining us. We're going to hear a little bit about the new vibe in St. Louis Park, just how that culture is shaping up, how the two halves are making a whole. Excited to hear from them later on in the episode. What do you say we go ahead and start with our first segment? Well, we'll start on Thursday night. A couple of games on Thursday. Milltown got a big victory at Vesely Baseball Field, 10-1 over the Vulcans. Another game in the South. Lakeville took on the Chuggers at King Park. Lakeville all over the Chuggers, 8-2. Last game of the night on Thursday, Tonka Bay Lakers took on the Capital City Cannons. A better showing for the Cannons this time. The Tonka Bay gets the win 9-5. Brandon Wolf goes 4 innings in that one for the win. Shutout baseball for Wolf. Scott Russert finished that one up for the Lakers. He threw 3 innings, allowed 5 runs, just 3 of them earned. Nate Jackson with a pair of hits. Lakers 9, Cannons 5. That brings us to Friday, where the league started taking a little bit of a shift with a win of the St. Paul JTs over the Rosemount Pipers. Christopherson not at that game. Probably the biggest takeaway, in my opinion, from that. JT's able to put up 7. Jeremy Belial went for the Pipers. Wade Johnson with a complete game gave up 6 runs, 5 of them earned. The JTs had 10 hits. Brooks, Yannick, Naru all had 2 hits each. JT's with what could be one of the bigger upsets of the season so far, 7-6 over the Pipers.
You'd think a staple kind of win for them, especially with the gym being gone this year and they're finding their footing. So, yeah, that's pretty awesome. Well, I know we get to see them a couple times this year and they're always fun to hang out with. But anytime you go to McMurray, the walk down that hill is a really steep one, and you better remember all your stuff the first time.
Well, that walk's always a little bit worse coming away when you have lost as a visiting team at McMurray, but Pipers had a rough weekend. They also dropped a game 4-3 to River Falls, and we've said it 1,000 times, when Myers and Marks goes, that gives River Falls a chance to win. Marks goes in that one. Groupers come away with a big win. Marks goes the distance, throws all 7 innings for the win, allowed 6 hits, 3 runs, all of them unearned, struck out 7. Big game for Derek Marks, big game for River Falls. They are now 3-2. Pipers have dropped to 5-2.
I'm glad we got to chat with these groupers guys before they started this heater here, because it's a little more palatable knowing that they're good guys and whatnot. So just another thing to worry about in the East, right?
Well, the St. Louis Park Snappers were in action over the weekend. They took on the upstart Minnetonka Mustangs. Snappers come away with the victory in this one, but it was close. 4-2. Brian Edstrom goes for the Snappers. He gets the win. Gave up 2 runs over 4 innings. The bullpen was perfect. Jason Capon and Pete Fuller were able to come in and shut down the Mustangs for the wins. 10 hits for the Snappers. Charlie Root and RIAN HEASLIP had a pair each.
Yeah, each of them had a double on the day too. I'm interested to, like you said, we got them a couple of these guys coming up later in the show to get to know a little more about what's going on over there in SLP. But yeah, they're staying hot like we kind of thought they would, right?
Another team we have to mention, the Metro Loons, off to a torrid pace, already 5-1. They were able to beat the Chaska Diamonds 4-2. Andy Pass with a great game on the mound for the Loons. He goes 6 innings, allows just 1 run, gets the win. Matt Brecky didn't give himself a save in the box score, but he needs to, if he's listening, go back in and credit himself with 1. Ryan Hess, Julian Oviedo, 2 hits each. Loons are hot.
Yeah. And it's not only been, I mean, their bats, it seems like they've been awake all year, but they've been throwing the ball well too. Now, granted, I have to go back and look to see who all they've played, but I mean, I feel like there hasn't been much doubt in many of the games they've had this year.
Well, other teams heating up. The Apple Valley A's win a couple of games. They moved to 4-2. Similar 8-2 victories over both St. Paul teams, the Senators and the JTs. Tony Schaefer goes 4 innings for the win against the Senators for the A's. Josh Stoll with 5 innings pitched, 2 runs allowed for the A's on Sunday, beating the JTs by the same score. Brian Cogswell, Paul Bissonette, Reggie Stevens all had multi-hit games for the A's. Tyler Naraki comes in and stitches that one up for us. He's looked really good so far, and we are really encouraged with what he brings to our pitching staff.
Yeah, I mean, take him on top of you and, Herm, and then let Tim come along as he, as his body allows, right? That's a great luxury you can have moving forward.
And your South Metro Saints pick up a pair of wins. You've exited that eternal, hopeless despair that you've been in. The Saints now 2-3. Don't let them get hot.
Room temp. Don't let us get lukewarm. We'll just leave it at that.
Another game I want to look into a little bit deeper. The Minoka Grays had a tough one with the Burnsville Bulldogs. That game at Alley Magnet, Bob Bundle Field. Michael Crane has a big 2 RBI double in the 7th to break what was a tie game at 4 apiece. Jack Nelson was excellent again in this one. He was 2 for 4, a double, 2 runs scored. Ben Schroeder gets another win for the Grays. Nelson pitched a near perfect 7th, getting the save. Van Krevelin at the top of that order was 3 for 4 with a double, an RBI, and a stolen base. Grays keep rolling. Maybe the only demerit for the Grays, we haven't seen Bub Lovis yet. Maybe he's not quite as healthy as we were thinking. Maybe he's got some external commitments, but that could be a notable loss if they don't see him much through the regular season as their schedule kind of heats up. But the way Ben Schroeder's dealing, the way Jack Nelson is dealing, seems to be all they need for now.
Yeah, I mean, if you're striking out 19 and 12 innings pitched, that clip's pretty decent, and they've accounted for, those two have accounted for all but one of their innings so far. Moving forward, it could be a demerit, but if he's not healthy, it could be a, blessing, giving him some extra time.
Voyagers pick up a win over the weekend as well. They beat the St. Anthony Norsemen 5-4 at Palm Field. Jamie Houslaw goes in that one for the Voyagers. He goes 5 2/3, allowing 4 earned runs. He hit 3. He walked 4. Wasn't maybe incredibly sharp, but good enough for the Voyagers. He gets the win. Dan Cheese throws an inning and a third for the 4-out save.
Hit 3 and walked 4. That's keeping them on their toes, right? That's pretty nice.
Effectively wild, we'll say, from Jamie Houslaw. Big win, though. Nice to see his brother in the box score as well. I played with Matt years ago, but fun to see that connection for the Voyagers and fun to see them in the left-hand column as well.
Absolutely.
Coney had a massive victory over the Rockford Rail Splitters. They won that game 15-4. Maybe a statement game for the Islanders. Rockford is pretty good, and Coney had no trouble with him. Scott Marquardt was 4 for 4, 7 RBI in that game. He also walked. Basso was 3 for 4 with a double. Smothers was 3 for 4 with a double. A couple of stolen bases. Coney, all in all, had 16 hits in that game. Tony Wishnack went 4 innings, gave up 4 runs, earns the win for the Islanders as they win a blowout against a really good team. Look out for the Islanders.
yeah, I get a memo received, right? We were kind of dancing around how they had one game or whatever in the books at one point a week or two ago, and kind of noting how we should probably pay more attention to these guys. Well, we got the memo, and moving forward, I'm sure they're going to be more of a topic as we spin things up.
On a similar note, Tonka Bay scores 15 against the St. Michael Angels. Jeremy Neitz was 4 for 4 with 3 doubles in that one, 4 RBI. Koenig and Klavitz, 2 hits each. Nick Drews was 3 for 5. He was a homer short of the cycle. Model goes for the Angels in that one. He gives up 10, but 7 of them unearned. Maybe the defense was kind of the story in that game, but Tonka Bay throws up a ton of runs. Scary to see them hitting and pitching the way that they are already.
Right. Yeah, we're sweating the bats in weeks 1 and 2. It was going to be an issue. Every one of these teams is going to come around, right? But for those guys, you can't give those teams like Tonka Bay or the Mammoth or whomever, these top, 10 teams, let's say, extra outs at all. When you're kind of grasping at straws to begin with, the wiggle room is very, very slim. And sounds like they just fell into one of those games where you had to suck it up and just eat it, right? I bet you the beers were cold though afterwards.
It was a great weekend for ball. 2 more games I want to highlight here. The RC Rockets beat the Middletown Outlaws 2-1. Zach Riedberger was sharp in that one, went 7 innings, got a complete game win, struck out 7, allowed just 1 hit. Riedberger is a legitimate ace. Now that they're sprinkling back in some Colin Warren, look out for the Rockets. The Lonsdale Jokers also beat the Vesely Vulcans 5-0. Sounds like the Jokers got off to a hot start, put up a 5 spot in the first in that one. Scott Angus was able to settle down, go the distance still for the Vulcans, but takes the loss nonetheless. But it's time now for the updated Fed Up Power Rankings. You'll notice Chris Miner doing these after dark, recording a little bit out of order tonight, but hopefully we'll be able to pull it all together. Looking forward to some of the comments from Arms and Hammer and others on the Twitter sphere about the backdrop.
I have all my rest of my wardrobe changes here, but I'm too afraid to change because I don't want anyone talking mess to me. Just kidding.
Well, the rankings had to shake up quite a bit. There's been some murmuring about a fed-up curse potentially bestowing the number 1 seed on a Rosemont team that couldn't hold up to it. I think, Christopherson being gone, maybe a big piece of that. We're not going to be knee-jerk around here, though. We're not going to just give you the top 10 teams in order of record. That wouldn't be any fun. But we're also not going to be Chicken Little where the sky is falling if a team loses a couple of games. So you'll notice a little bit of a shakeup. One was needed, but still going to feature a lot of those same teams from a week ago.
Yeah, I mean, we asked for some noise, and we certainly got it this weekend.
Well, some teams getting votes that aren't showing up yet in our power rankings. Teams like the Metro Loons, who are 5-1, just on the outside of our top 10. Lonsdale is 5-1, just on the outside of our top 10 power rankings. Those teams continue to do good things. I think they will definitely make an appearance. But let's start with the number 10 spot. We've still got the Newmarket Northerns, 5-1. We want to see from them, going toe to toe with another one of the top 10 teams and getting a key win to move up. They're going to get a chance to do that when they take on Lakeville Lobos twice this week.
Yeah, I mean, across 6 games, I mean, it's a nice little start for them, right? So I know we've had a chance to kind of get in depth with them on the side, and it sounds like they've got a lot to be excited about down there. So well-deserved spot. I'd argue they might even be able to bump up a few spots in this poll, to be honest.
Well, they beat Lakeville once or twice, and they will do just that.
Exactly.
We'll go back to the West for our number 9 slot. Still got the Minnetonka Saints there. They haven't played a ton of games. I feel like we know what we have with that team. We've mentioned, they're led by their ace, Brandon Casadecalvo. Joe Purcell, I know, is very high on his team's odds. We just need to see a little bit more of what we think we know already about the Saints, but they'll have a chance to do that with a couple of big games next week as well.
Hoping to get in touch with Joe Collier here at some point to talk about the Saints as well. I mean, they made that jump last year to AAA, right? So, I mean, I think it's about time that we kind of synced up with them and got a little more in depth with what's going on down there.
There you go, Joe. Stick by your phone. Could be a potential guest spot on an upcoming episode of Fed Up. And our 8th slot is remaining unchanged as well. The Waconia Islanders, big win for them over Rockford. They were very impressive in that victory. This is a team on the rise. They stay at number 8 in our power rankings, but definitely a team that we will be watching closely.
Yeah, they have Burnsville coming up, right? And 2 of them against them. And, if you sweep Burnsville with the pitching and defense that they play, you're onto something.
Change up at our number 7 are those Rosemount Pipers. We've dropped them all the way from the 1 spot down to 7. A couple of big losses there. Tough to say that the season's obviously not over for these guys. Missing their ace and Christopherson is probably a pretty key reason for those losses, but it does beg some questions. Does this team have the depth, especially on the mound, to make a deep postseason run? I know Cliff is a guy that can throw a lot of innings. He can come back quickly, but when he's not there or he's not able to go. But I talked to manager Ken Fry, and he is not panicked by any means. He knows he's going to have his group ready for a big week for them, as well as they take on the Mammoth and have that doubleheader with the Rockets and the A's. But we've got them now at 7, looking to work their way back up.
I mean, they're in the mix of a real grinder right now. They have, the Mammoth coming up, RC coming up, you guys, Newmarket, Lonsdale, JTs. We're going to figure out a lot here in the next 3 weeks. However, they're the type of team, they're equipped for a run in the playoffs if they have the pitching to come together, right? And if you look at their schedule in July, it's a little lighter. Maybe get your rhythm back and kind of build towards playing your best ball at the end of July going into August.
Well, another team that has fallen a spot in our power rankings, the Hastings Hurricanes. They go to Lakeville last week and lose a very contentious game to the Lobos. A lot was going on back and forth with the scheduling. I know both teams are really fired up. I think both teams had really good rosters there. But Hastings has yet to go toe-to-toe with Mount Rushmore of the Federal League, right, whatever we're calling it, and pull out a victory. And that's the reason we've got them on the outside looking in at the 6th slot.
Sure. I agree. Last week I argued you could make a case for number 1 for Hastings. One thing about being that team that's constantly on the cusp, right, or just on the outside looking in, is sometimes you have a tendency to make a bigger deal out of some of these games than they are. And I know Tuckner's a passionate dude. I know him pretty well, and he's a nice guy. And I'm sure he was geared up for it. And, and you obviously hear that when you get to how intense some of these back and forths are, especially after the game. But, it's just one ding for them, right? We got them later this week, and, they have Elko, Middletown, St. Patrick coming up. So they're actually on the road quite a bit for the first time here after a bunch of home games. So we'll see how they rebound.
Well, the piece that we have yet to see from Hastings that would offer some encouragement to the Hurricanes fan base is Keith Myers is waiting in the mix to make an appearance for the Hurricanes. He is a guy that has played at some very high levels of baseball throughout his career. He's a little bit older, but from what I hear, he can still bring it, and he might be that ace that the Hurricanes need to be able to match up with teams like Lakeville and Minoka.
They have, guys that can throw. I mean, they got Fritz from the Grays too, right? So they have, the guys that have been there, done that. I think it's just getting the reps and just kind of finding an identity as a squad as a whole, and kind of, going through more of these, knock them down, Mount Fed type of matchups, and just getting the reps with those.
Yeah, Pfeffer's a great pitcher. He's good enough to beat anybody, I would say. But to have another big arm in that rotation for them, I think will only benefit them come. Well, our top 5 this week has all slid up 1 spot. So we'll start with that 5-hole. Our guests for the day are both on this roster, the St. Louis Park Snappers. They're 4-0. They've won some close games. They are really deep in pitching. They have a talented group. I fully expect this team to be very competitive for the division, make the AAA, and stay high in our Fed Up Power Rankings for the duration of the season.
Yeah, it sounds like they're approaching things the way you kind of have to with the unique situation that they're in. Basically doing it by committee, right? And I think that's going to pay off dividends huge for them moving forward, especially towards the end of the year with guys being not burnt out and plenty of guys that have seen an inning or two or seen a handful of innings, handful of bats, etc. So yeah, I think we're going to see more of the same from SLP moving forward.
The 4 slot is Tonka Bay. The thing we wanted to see the most from them was them scoring runs. They did that in bunches this last week. They seem to be firing with some of the pieces that they've added with Klavitz and Koenig, and obviously the top of the rotation with Brower and Wolf makes them a legit contender for the championship at the end of the year. In at number 4 is the Tonka Bay Lakers.
Sure. And they have St. Anthony and Eden Prairie, who we both know that are going through what they're going through. So playing on a team like that with the pitching moxie that they have, if you're an offensive player or a defensive player for that matter, you kind of walk around with a little more of a swag, right? And you don't sweat as much, you don't put as much pressure on yourself, you think. So I think it's just a matter of time for those guys, and they have a couple games here to really kind of get it tuned up on the offensive side before they really get into things with Burnsville and Minoka here.
In at number 3, the East Metro Mammoth. What do you say about them? I mean, they're obviously really good. The teams ahead of them are obviously really good. You know, we're splitting hairs when it comes to kind of some of these top groups. The Mammoth, haven't made a championship game in a couple of years, but they clearly have the pieces to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's too bad that they had to try to duck us today to keep this power rankings straight for this week. But I digress. Yeah, they're going to be fine. It's who's going to be there. I mean, I know Cork's been there more this year, it looks like. It's, to me, for them, it's pitching. They've basically leaned on Matt ever since their inception. Matt, Kenny, Stark, a handful of guys, right? So, is that going to be enough moving forward? I don't know what they have in the hopper for this year. I'm sure Cork will get a couple innings too. But I think we know what we're going to get with them by and large, and it's just a matter of how things match up at the end of the year, I think.
The trouble for the Mammoth, they play, I think, in a very competitive East Division. They're going to have, teams like Apple Valley twice. They're going to have teams like, River Falls twice. If they see Marks and Meyer, those will be good tests for them. Your group, I know, has always played them really tough. We'll get to see just what kind of mettle the Mammoth have going forward. In at number 2 are the Lakeville Lobos. They're the only 6-win team in the league, have a tremendous pitching staff. Austin Mitchell, I know, was thrown in the low 80s last week. Erdahl really brings it. They've got Meyer, who appears to, be back and throwing, some limited innings here to start the year. But, if you're going to put him at the tail end of games, you better get your runs early. But Lakeville looks really good, really deep, and poised to make a championship run for the first time in quite some time.
And getting your runs in earlier is better said or easier said than done with the guys that they have out there too. So Steinberg, just name them, right? I just feel like them getting Meyer back and just kind of getting more, like I kind of alluded to before, when you have that guy, that ace on your team, you worry about less. You play freer, you know what I mean? So I think for them, it's just kind of starting to get back to where they were a couple of years ago.
That brings us to our top spot. It's the 2-time defending champion. Maybe we should have had them there to begin with. The Minoka Grays. Ben Schroeder is a godsend for them. He has just been electric, really, really dominant. Jack Nelson seems to be in good form. He is just an absolute force for that group. Top of their lineup with Ben Crevelin and just RBI machine Matt Johnson. They get their guys, and I feel like this is a group that really gels well together. They work hard, in terms of hitting in the cages as a group. Joey is unbelievable. They are just a group that seems hungry, too, to go ahead and throw that three-peat up on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, if you keep tabs on these guys during the wintertime, I bet you'd be able to find them at Hit Club or something like that. I mean, they're about it all the time, 12 months a year, right? This squad is perhaps better than the 2 that they've won titles with.
Maybe.
That being said, if I look at their schedule, it doesn't appear, at least on the surface, that they have back-to-back tests like in a weekend or something like that. So, if I'm a betting man and they're sitting here at the top spot, they might run into 1 or 2 little dings here, but I don't see on paper of them having a slide of more than 1 or 2 games. That's just me. So I don't see them slipping anytime soon.
Well, we'll get a chance to see just how real that fed-up curse potentially can be. We'll see what it does to Minoka as they now move forward with that one spot and that bullseye on their back. Teams, we're not breaking any news by, letting teams know that Minoka is not a team to be trifled with.
Hey, Kalina, we're trying our best, buddy. 4 o'clock Saturday, June 7th. Be there. Greenfield. Let's go.
Well, that is our Fed Up Power Rankings. We'll bring you a brand new rendition of it again next week. But for now, we're on to our next segment. Well, it's time now for a segment we like to call What's on Tap. We'd like to look at the Federal League schedule over the week to come. But first, let's look at a couple of taps at Tap Society. The two I've picked this week are both blondes. The Brule River Blonde out of the Voyager Brewing Company. Chaska might be interested to hear about them. They're out of Grand Marais, Minnesota. The Brule River Blonde is a session American blonde ale that is meant to be enjoyed in the heat of summer. So when you get those dog days of summer, go fill up your glass with a Brule River Blonde. Sounds delicious.
My wife is from Brule, Wisconsin. We're the home of the Brule River.
There you go.
You're hitting me right in the feels today, Stoli. Oh my gosh.
Well, I don't know if you've got a personal tie to our other blonde, but the Banshee Cutter Blonde is from Insight Brewing Company out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's a smooth, light roast coffee golden ale. These are both on tap as part of the 26 rotating taps you can find at Tap Society. If you haven't been, I say it every week, but you gotta go. This place is awesome. What's on tap in the Federal League? 28 games will take place from Thursday, June 5th through Tuesday, June 10th before we bring you our next episode. Way too many to try and cover them all, but so many games of note in this stretch. One of the teams I'm looking at to maybe have a big week is yours, the South Metro Saints. Couple of big games. One of them already rained out on Tuesday. You guys still have the River Falls Groupers at Hawks Baseball Field on Thursday. Then you also take on the Hastings Hurricanes back at Hawks Baseball Field on Saturday. A couple of big games with some really big postseason implications for your group.
Yeah, not only for our group, but, regardless of where we finish, if you ding up one of the other guys in the league, it's just going to have a ripple effect around everywhere else. We've spent a lot of time playing at Hastings last year, and over the last couple of years, is basically kind of our adopted second home. And then Tuckner had to go ahead and start a team last year. And if you look at our schedule, I think we have like half a dozen games, or we have like 4 or 5 games in a row here. There's squatters at their complex or whatever, but it'll be fun because Hastings on Saturday night.
Well, it's a great town for baseball, great vibe. I haven't played there yet myself, but looking forward to the time where we are able to have that chance. Couple other games. The Lakeville Lobos and the Newmarket Northerns have a home and home. The first will be Thursday at King Park. Those two teams will meet again this week on Sunday at the Fishbowl. Look for those to be two just absolute slugfests between two teams featured in our power rankings.
Old-fashioned Southern Division tilt, and Newmarket hasn't seemed to regress at all, so it should be a pretty fun weekend for both of those squads.
Another set of teams taking on a same note. Burnsville and Waconia will play. That game will be a part of a doubleheader games at 5 and 7 o'clock on Sunday, June 8th. And we can't go through what's on tap without talking about the Rosemount Pipers. This is a real fork in the road for them. Having lost a couple, the schedule doesn't get any easier. They've got the Mammoth on Friday night. Cliff will be back, so you would expect him to maybe go for that game, but then the Pipers have a doubleheader against the RC Rockets and the Apple Valley A's on Sunday. It's a big stretch of games coming off a couple of losses for the Pipers.
Yeah. No rest for the weary. I mean, you get kicked, you got to get back up. I mean, there's no time to really sit there and lick your wounds, right? Especially, it's just bad timing for them to run into one, on this particular week, right? It'd be palatable maybe if it were a lighter weekend or something, but yeah, we'll see. I said it last week, it's nut cutting time for the Rosemount Pipers.
Another game I've got circled here will be on Friday, June 6th. The Minnetonka Mustangs will travel to Big Willow and host the Rockford Rail Splitters. We'll see if the Mustangs can continue their delightfully surprising start, or if the Rockford Rail Splitters can potentially bounce back from what was a lukewarm week for them after getting pounded earlier in the week.
Yeah, see how they rebound. They started out nice, had a nice close tilt against Tonka Bay. That was their only real blemish, right? So is this just a hiccup, or, we'll see.
One last game at Big Willow will be played between the Metro Loons and the Minnetonka Saints. We'll get to see if the Loons are for real. I mean, that is a big-time opponent. They are 5-1. They are taking on the Minnetonka Saints, who haven't played a lot of games yet this season. But the Loons win that game, it's game on, I think, for them. I think they start thinking AAA, start thinking maybe winning the West. I mean, sky's kind of the limit right now. Or will they maybe get a dose of reality from a really good Saints team?
Right. Well, I think their scoring differential is plus 35 right now over the course of 5 games. I think they are for real. It's just a matter of, does the pitching last throughout the whole summer? Right. I think that's a question for a lot of people, but for them as well.
We covered about 11 games there on the schedule. As you can tell, it's already a jam-packed week for the Federal League. We're going to scroll the other games, across the bottom. Make sure you keep an eye out for those. Come out and attend some really good baseball. The games that we don't mention, obviously, are going to have a big impact on how things shake out for the brackets in August. But a really busy week. Should be a lot of fun to cover next week. Well, it's time now for a couple of guests. Really, the first players we've featured from the Snappers. We did have Ryan Marshall's wife on for the Real Housewives of the Federal League, but super excited to sit down and chat with former Northern Ryan HEASLIP, current co-manager Jeff Wilson, just see how that vibe is going and hear a couple of baseball stories from some guys who've been around the league and done some really great things. Well, without any further ado, let's go ahead and bring them on. Well, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome a couple of first-time guests to the podcast, Jeff Wilson and Ryan HEASLIP, both of the St. Louis Park Snappers. Gentlemen, welcome to Fed Up.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Josh. Happy to be here.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yep.
Well, you may have heard prior episodes, but one of the things we like to do when we have guests on for the very first time is just get to know you guys a little bit better and hear your baseball stories. Maybe we'll go age before beauty here, and we'll start with Jeff. What's your baseball story?
Thanks. Not a long story. Played high school ball. After high school, didn't play much. About 28, I took over a Sunday League team, 18-plus team. Coached that for 25 years. And then had a pretty good record with that. Had some great players. Had one guy that played for the Saints in the middle of one of our seasons. Pretty awesome. Had some All-Americans. Pat Marsh played for me. And then a lot of the current players that I have. Eric Olson, Ryan Marshall, all those guys kind of came up from that team. And they were on the 35-plus team, which is cool. And now I've been coaching this one, coaching the Snappers since for about 16 years now. So it's been up and down, but mostly successful. Can't say that I'm disappointed. I love being around the guys and had tons of great players and still do. So yeah, it's not really a depth story. Didn't play college ball or anything, or didn't do too much town ball. I think I played a season for White Bear Township. That was about it.
Well, I know you're absolutely a well-respected and cherished member of the Federal League. Been a part of the league for a long time, and I know guys absolutely love playing for you. Ryan, maybe tell us a little bit about your baseball story.
Yeah, I grew up locally here in St. Louis Park, and played through high school, played in college, went to a junior college in Kansas. Experienced a ton of fun playing baseball, had some offers to go play after that. Ended up wanting to come home to figure it out from there, and ended up not playing once I got home. I hurt in a rec football accident. I broke half of my face, and then turned into a town ball player. But started with St. Louis Park playing town ball Class A in 1998. That's when baseball became the most fun for me. It was a blast. We went out and we hit with wood. Everybody else was hit with an aluminum. We'd still, kick their butts. We finished, I think, the first 3 years we hit wood, everybody hit aluminum. I think we took 3 second places. And then when the state changed over to to wood, we won our first championship. So it was pretty sweet, pretty fun. I've had the unique opportunity to play with the same group of guys pretty much for 20 years. And that's kind of what leads us right here, right? With the guys that have moved over with the Snappers. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later, but it's playing baseball with your buddies. That's all it is. My story's a little bit different. We just played town ball forever, So, but yeah, that's kind of my baseball story. Now I coach my kids and then help Jeff run the Snappers.
Well, let's dive right into that player movement that you were kind of alluding to. I feel like in 2024, the Snappers were kind of the team that maybe had some of the league's sympathy, empathy. You had a couple of key guys depart for Lakeville that I feel like that move was done fairly close to the start of the season. And guys were left wondering, how the Snappers going to be this year with, saying goodbye to a couple of those players. I know Ryan Marshall was banged up. You guys ended up having, what is mostly considered for you to be kind of a down year. You had a great postseason run, but maybe just talk a little bit about those feelings of, sending some guys onto another team and kind of how that move came about, Jeff.
Yeah, just like I said before, I've had a lot of great players over the years that have left. I could probably name probably a half dozen teams that I've had guys that have played for me that have gone on. And Trevor Stolhansky, Hollywood, Brett, and Rick Abishan actually approached me in the fall, and we all went out for drinks and we talked about it. They gave me why they wanted to leave, and I understood that, our team was struggling a little bit. We didn't have the pitching that teams like Lakeville and other teams have been picking up. Voyagers at the time when they picked up Brewer, or, the Lakers are coming in. So they have great pitching. And that's what they were looking for. They were looking for more wins and the higher level, the AAA, which is what we're all looking for. But I wished them well. No hard feelings on my part. I know some of the other guys on the team, where we become friends. I mean, I still talk to those guys to this day. If we get together every once in a while, yeah, it's great. So every once in a while, I just ask them, hey, how's it going? You gonna come back? But just in jest. So, but they're very loyal, and they're loyal to Lakeville, and I get it. I appreciate that. And so I don't think there was any poaching or malicious anything that was going on. I get along with Tori. I don't think there was any problems with any of that stuff.
I know Tori's very close with Ashaban and a couple of those guys, and I know that was a very natural fit, for them to go there. Obviously, they're very competitive, got a lot of nice pieces in Lakeville, and they've definitely made a difference in sliding over and helping that team remain competitive.
That's why I understand. Like I said, I've had great players in the past go to other teams. They want to get better. Pat Ralston went to the Mammoth. I get it. Everybody wants to win. That's what I'm trying to do. And, going on to last year, I think part of it is, Marshall was out with his shoulder surgery. Capon had some medical issues that were unexplained till pretty much the end of the season when he finally could come in. And that was a big reason why I think we had a pretty good run in the playoffs, because he didn't play at all last year. I think he got one or two starts. But a guy that doesn't throw hard, but is very crafty, he was a big reason why we went 18-2, a few years ago. He was probably one of the best pitchers in the league. So, you don't have to throw a lot of heat to be good, but it doesn't hurt to have some really good depth in pitching, and I think that's what we picked up this year.
Yeah, that is absolutely a huge asset for the Federal League, especially when you have so many games condensed over the summer. We'll fast forward now to 2025, and maybe we'll go to Ryan for this question, because we've talked about it at length. A group of 10 guys came over from the Newmarket Northerns, a team that was in the championship game 2 years in a row. And these aren't just bottom feeders of that roster. These are some really core guys. Slip, I know that you've been huge when it comes to, postseason runs for that group. Gurmar was a huge part of that, brought a lot of guys with you. Maybe talk a little bit about what was behind that move, how that got started. Obviously, you've already mentioned your roots in St. Louis Park, but how does a move like that come together?
Yeah, so Newmarket was, I was brought down there by a guy that I played with St. Louis Park, Matt Paulson, was the first Park guy to go down there. He was buddies with Steve Labens, who was our second baseman for a long time. Great player, ended up running our team a couple years ago with Nick Novak. Great dudes. We had great experience down there. Fast forward 2 years ago, Nick and Steve decide, it's too much for them. They can't run the team. And Matt Gurmar and I kind of stepped up. It was late in the season. We didn't want to not play. We didn't want to kind of piece together, a couple of us come back and go someplace and, a couple guys go here and there, right? Because we were it started with Matt, brought me, I brought Pete Fuller. We last year we had a bunch of guys, so it was all our core St. Louis Park guys that we always thought about playing together. And they just gave us the opportunity to go down there and play. Just at the time, I think the age group in Newmarket just wasn't ready to take over that 35 plus team. Obviously, you've seen that they've retooled. We knew they would. We knew there were other guys that were coming into play. But at the end of the day, it was the end of the season last year, and we were like, do we come back into the city? Do we start our own team? Some of our guys are starting to realize, some of the St. Louis Park guys are seeing how much fun we're having in the Federal League and how much the competition's gotten better. You start getting phone calls randomly. Hey, I'd love to come play. And eventually you've got this whole group of dudes, but the problem is we don't have any full-time dudes. Everybody was like, I can be there 6 to 10 games, I can't, but everybody's coaching their kids, and a bunch of guys are still playing town ball and stuff like that. Long story short, we made the decision last year, towards, I suppose, in the off season, that it was time for us. I live in Shoreview. I don't like driving an hour and a half to go play baseball. I did it because I love baseball, and the Newmarket and the fields that we play down there are great. But at the end of the day, it's a lot easier for me to go to St. Louis Park and play than all the way down there. So, and that kind of, they knew it was going to happen eventually. I tried to give them as much of an, update as we could. And we heard that they were planning on running a team this year anyway. So I think it was perfect. Could we have all played together and coexisted? Absolutely. But I think they're going to be great on their own. We're going to be great, merging in with Jeff. And, that was one of the other things. We didn't want to walk into a situation where, hey, I've got 10, 12 guys. I mean, now, 10 guys moved, but I think we've added 15, and it wasn't a situation. We didn't want to walk into a situation and say, sorry, we're better than you guys. You guys are on the bench now. That was the last thing we wanted to do, right? We all are here for a reason. We're all part of a team, so we wanted to go to a situation that worked out. Honestly, it took a while to figure out that spot. I knew Jeff from back in the day. He went to St. Louis Park as well. We have some connections. One of my best friends played for Jeff in the TC Mabel. Is that what you guys, not TC? I always call it the TCM Mabel. Apparently I got my hands slapped, but so there were connections there. So I called Jeff and said, hey, what's your situation? I know you guys lost a couple guys last year. Here's what we have. Is this something that you need? I don't want people to get cut, right? I don't want people to be upset. Like, everybody has to be the understanding that, we're a team and we're together and stuff like that. And it's been great so far. I mean, we're 4 games in, everybody's contributing, it's been good. It's been fun.
Just to go on top of what Ryan's saying too, is we were starting to lose guys as of the end of last season as well. So I knew that there was, I know a ton of guys. Could have put a team together, but it just wasn't going to be like this kind of team. And I knew that I had a core guy. I have a set of core guys, 7, 8 guys that are going to be there almost every single game. And we just needed to add those extra really good players that was going to help the team, I think. And unfortunately, we lost Julian because Ryan and I didn't talk fast enough, apparently. He had already moved on to the Loons before, probably even before the Hickory. So that was a big loss for us, I think, because he looks like he's playing great right now.
Unbelievable hitter, yes, yeah. And seemingly a great dugout guy too. Yeah. Definitely a big loss for the group, I'm sure. But talk a little bit more about how you make 2 halves become a whole. I mean, I assume you guys are kind of co-managing this team. Is that right?
It's kind of a 3-headed monster right now. So it's Jeff, myself, and Matt Germar. That's the other piece too. I was talking about the St. Louis Park side. The other guys that we added were former Cobras from the Park National. So Matt Germar, Jake Krause, Jeff Miller has joined us this year. So it's the combination of guys that we've played against forever. We added one other guy, Charlie Rudd, who I think he's been one of the best town ball pitchers in the state of Minnesota for the last however long. And that was just a random call. He heard we were playing in the city, and knows us from going down and playing Dundas and stuff like that. And you can't say no to a guy like that wants to come play with you. So, and he's a great dude too. So far, that's been it's made it easy where it's kind of like 3 teams merging into one. everybody's got somebody that has their back, which is nice. Jeff, Matt, and myself, we text a couple times a week to talk about, hey, what's our plan for this week? What are we going to do? How are we going to make sure everybody touches the field? Those types of things. And it's worked out so far. We're 4 games in, right? 4, Jeff?
Yep.
So far, so good.
2 rainouts.
No fights. No, I don't think anybody's gotten angry, Yeah, 2 rainouts. But, it's been good so far. I'm sure Jeff has other things to add there, too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know what? Every guy that we picked up from the Newmarket and Ryan's and Maria brought in are great. They're ball players. They're teammates. Just like the guys that I kept they want to win. They want to be good teammates. They do whatever they can to make sure that we win as a team. And I think that's what the big key is right this year, is that everybody's getting along no matter what. And my idea has always been to, have good defensive players, good offensive players, guys that can run the bases, and if there's 3 different guys that can do that, to excel, that's going to make us even better. So, yeah, I think we're a good fit.
As you mentioned, you're 4 games in, 4-0, so experiment so far so good. Great to hear on the culture piece. That seems to be one that something you can't teach. If you start with the right guys, I feel in a similar mentality, I think that helps things gel like they appear to be doing so far for you guys. Ryan, let me ask you, what's going to be like if you end up in the AAA and you see the guys from Newmarket? I assume there's not a lot of bad blood there, but those would be 2 motivated teams.
Yeah. You know what? I don't think there's any bad blood. You never know how people feel. I look at those guys as teammates. I enjoyed playing with them quite a bit. I don't think there's going to be any issues. I fully expect to run into them in the AAA. It'll be fun. And, I mean, that's what kind of has brought the competitiveness in this league up, right? The more good teams, the more people that are out there having a good time and handling it the right way. Like I will say, like, it was the tough thing about leaving Newmarket is, so we played almost all Sunday games, right? It was Sunday at like 5:00. Every one of our kids would come. They'd be in the outfield playing baseball afterwards. Like, we play at 8:00 on a Monday, right? My kid's 10. He can't come, during school and stuff like that. So I miss that piece, like that fun small town communities type of stuff. Like it's awesome. So I hope, as it seems like more town ball guys are coming in, the TCM ABL contingent, the competition there has gotten better over the years. Like, I just think as we continue to get older, right? Like, we're not young guys anymore. I'm 45. Every time I throw the ball, I can feel it in my arm. As younger guys come in, I think this just makes the league even better. And, the AAA is going to be fun this year with more teams. And, you can run into some great pitching with, Brower, and gosh, the kid from Burnsville's, that guy's tough, man. There's so many guys out there that can beat you. It's awesome.
Well, I think as an outsider, I think when, players in our league see a massive move like this, they assume that there must have been some fission, some cataclysmic event that led to a major shift like that. But I think it's so encouraging to hear that movement can be done organically, inorganically, but it to the league benefit. Obviously Newmarket is a team that I expected to be down a little bit after losing 10 guys like that, but it's business as usual for them. They're off to a hot start. They're 5-1. They've picked up some local players that have really recharged that group. It's fun to see them not skip a beat, and to see what it's done for the Snappers, I think, is just a huge testament that player movement can be good for the league. I'll give you another example. We had a pitcher, Scott Angus, who wanted more innings, and we feel like we're a pretty deep team on the mound, and he just thought it was a great move for him to look elsewhere. He's gone to Vesely now, and he's had a chance to have 3-4 starts already for them, and he's happy. Him and I text every week. He'll give me updates on his games. He still checks in on our group. So it's a great relationship still there. And I just think that player movement, we don't sign contracts in the Fed, right? But it can be done, and it can be done well to the benefit of both groups.
Totally agree.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that start. You guys are 4-0, who are managing a two halves, making them merge into a whole. Talk about your pitching approach. It seems to be kind of by committee at this point. No one guy is going out there and shoving, 7 innings. It's a couple innings here, a couple innings here, there, from different guys. Talk about how your approach has got you off to that hot start.
Yeah, you take that, Ryan.
Right on. Yeah, so we are, we have the liberty to be super deep in pitching. Our pitching staff. And the cool thing about it is, and this is one of the fun things for me, like, nobody knows our guys. Like, nobody knows that the guy that we threw out last week, Brian Edstrom, won a national title with St. Thomas, was with their ace in like 2002 or something. Like, nobody knows, which is so cool. Like, it's kind of fun for our guys to, we played 20 years together, showing up every place, and they're like, we know every single one of these guys that we're playing, or we faced Donnie Rudd or Charlie Rudd playing. We knew when we were going to Dundas, we're going to face him, or when we're playing St. Louis or Minnetonka, we're going to run into Donnie Erdahl, right? Like, it's kind of fun having that. These guys nobody knows us, which is cool. We're kind of unknown, but our pitching staff is really, really good. It starts with, Brian Edstrom, Pete Fuller, Matt Germar. I mean, Matt Germar's been throwing the ball for so long. He's the craftiest dude out there. Myself, Harley Rudd, Capon, Dave Killian. Like, I mean, that's names upon names of guys that are just legit. We've got a couple other guys that are potentially going to touch the mound for us. A lefty, Bennett Johnson, played with the Cobras, and Matt Germar and Kraus. A couple other guys. So, our pitching staff is so deep that we're like, hey, you go 3, you go 3, you go 1, right? Let's see how it goes. If somebody gets roughed up, we got another guy right behind you. And then everybody touches the field, right? We're probably not going to be the team that is going to, have a guy throw a CG for a while, maybe towards the end of the year and stuff like that. But, maybe that guy gets to go throw 4 and then get an AB later on, which is fun. And then everybody that shows up, right? You're not just there to drink beer. You get to touch the field and throw a couple innings and be part of the win. And I think that's what Jeff and Matt and myself have done a good job of early in the year. Is like, hey, this is for everyone. We've played some close games, and we've had guys that you throw the lineup out there, and you wouldn't say like that's the guy that's going to win this game. We had Halverson throws a guy out at second, just trying to steal. It was the biggest play of the game. The other day, like that's the unsung hero of that game. So it's been really fun having those types of things come up, and yeah. So pitching, we're deep. We will probably throw a couple guys every game. They're all gonna be pretty firm. They're all gonna have pretty good stuff and know how to pitch. So yeah,
our defense has been outstanding. I mean, we had our first game was we were up 7-8 to 3 or something, and we ended up winning 8-7. But that was like the last inning. But otherwise, we're winning, 3-1, 4-2, 3-2 against Burnsville. I mean, Eric Olson at shortstop, Marshall at first, been picking everything. The guys in the outfield, Arlt in center, just got the speed. I mean, we've had some great defensive plays and playing defense really well. Just the only thing we got to get going is our bats.
Well, I don't doubt that you will do that. It can't help your anonymity in terms of coming on a podcast like this and talking about some of the backstories of some of your guys. Sorry to ruin that tidbit for you, but just one of the reasons we are excited to have you on is to get to know a little bit about some of your guys and hear some of those stories. I think I've been saying Charlie Rude, so it's good to hear that it's Rudd, and I can get that name right going forward. But I know he was just recently inducted into his college's Hall of Fame, so he is a big-time player that with a big-time baseball pedigree, and it sounds like you guys are really deep and enjoying the spoils of bringing it together the way that you have.
I just want to give a shout-out to Tom Cook, to our starting catcher. He's been blocking everything. I think our pitching staff really likes him. He's a guy I picked up a couple of years ago just in a tryout in a gym, and he's probably one of the best catchers I've seen in years. So.
Mm-hmm. We love Tom. Tom's a great catcher.
Huge piece having a good backstop that can handle a really deep staff. So I'm glad you got that in.
Yep. And then Halverson backed him up because Tom, I think, cracked a rib a couple weeks ago against Burnsville. So Halverson filled in and he threw a guy out at second. So we had two three good catchers with Chris Johnson as well.
And Jeff, don't forget about Jeff Miller.
Jeff Miller, yep.
We're a stacked catching team too. It's ridiculous. We went from last year. I was basically our backup catcher at Newmarket, and that's not good for anybody. You know what I mean? We're pretty stacked. Chris Johnson, shout out to Chris too. He's probably the catcher I've thrown to the most in my entire career. He ran the Parktown team when I started, and he came back and joined us a couple years ago. And I'll even add on that, and I've probably said this a couple times during this conversation, but we're playing with our buddies. It's the same as everybody else out here, right? Like, that's why we wanted to do this. We get to go have beers with our buddies. We don't see each other that often, right? Everybody has kids, and we're coaching, and you at work and stuff like that. So, it's our getaway. Go have a beer, hang out with our buddies, compete. That's the fun thing about it. And, what I would say too is, you may not know us, but we're super approachable. We're nice dudes. We're good dudes. We're good baseball players. We're going to treat the game the right way. You're not going to, I hope that you don't leave the game thinking like, God, those guys are a-holes. I hope they're like, hey, they played it the right way. They're good dudes. That's important for us.
Well, and obviously that is the goal, to make a opportunity for everyone to keep playing. The departure of some of those guys from Newmarket opened up more slots for guys to step in and join a really great league. Love seeing the Snappers get healthy in terms of just roster size and their ability to compete. But you're absolutely right. It's about playing with your friends. And, I'm sure there are teams in this league that might only win a handful of games, but they're doing the same thing we all are, right? They're playing with their buddies. They're having a good time doing it. Even if the left-hand column, doesn't tick up the way that they might want it to, they're still able to have their core, have their group, have their beers in the parking lot, and do it, like you said, the right way.
Exactly.
Well, gentlemen, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to come on. Jeff, you have just been around this league for so long, and glad to finally have you on the podcast and share a little bit of your story. I think you are a Hall of Famer in my book. Hopeful for you to maybe join the ranks here in this year or coming years. And Ryan, I know you've been just an absolute force when it comes to dictating how these AAA playoffs have been decided in the last couple of years. So it's just an absolute pleasure to have you both on and get to know you both a little bit better. Look forward to seeing you in this season and many to come.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Josh. It was great. Yeah, good luck to everybody on the season.
Loved catching up with Ryan HEASLIP and Jeff Wilson of the St. Louis Park Snappers. Great to hear their baseball stories. Clearly, they are high on their group with big expectations for the season. Love catching up with Jeff Wilson, just a real humble guy, and tough not to root for their group. Big week ahead for the Snappers. Well, that is all the time we have for this edition of Fed Up. Looking forward to a ton of games being played over the course of the next week. Hopefully Mother Nature cooperates and we get to take care of some of these rainouts as well. But until then, stay fed. Welcome to Fed Up.